Hey guys, tonight we slip onto the west slope of Seongneung Hill, following a trail cushioned with crunchy pine needles and draped in late summer dusk. The last lick of sunlight paints the clouds a lazy apricot, and you suddenly feel as though a hidden paw has pinched the back of your neck, that the two granite tigers guarding King Gongmin's tomb are quietly counting your footsteps. Before we tiptoe up the hill tonight, let me orient you. We stand in modern-day South Korea, yet our footsteps echo across 6 centuries to the waning Goryeo dynasty and the cautious dawn of Joseon. Picture the year 1374. King Gongmin has just been laid to rest on this pine-clad ridge after a reign tangled in Mongol politics, monastic reforms, and the heartbreak of his queen's assassination. Two granite tigers' masterworks of court artisanship, planted here as white tiger guardians, facing the setting sun to ward off Western evils and remind future visitors that this king still commands a perimeter. Leap ahead to 1905. Japanese colonial engineers, hungry for artifacts, dynamite the tomb, prying open its stone throat and ferrying treasures overseas. Local rumor insists those tigers blinked that night, and every looter suffered fever, shipwreck, or sudden disappearance within 3 days. Folklore? Perhaps. Yet archived coroner notes and a vessel lost off Shimonoseki keep historians politely unsettled. Now roll the reel to the present. You arrive as a night shift technician on a low-profile multinational dig. Your colleagues wield LiDAR drones, ultraviolet lamps, and more doctoral theses than daylight hours, while still slipping sticks of sage into their toolboxes just in case. This hillside is a palimpsest where 14th century statecraft, 20th century occupation trauma, and 21st century science overlap like translucent maps. Every pine needle seems wired for surveillance. Every breeze feels scripted by an unseen dramaturge. Hold that backdrop close. Medieval intrigue, colonial plunder, and modern skepticism all press against the fabric of darkness. Somewhere between them lies a chiseled riddle under a granite paw, a supply truck that may or may not respect gravity, and whispers riding the west wind. Take a slow, breath pine resin, old promises, maybe a hint of danger, because this is where scholarship meets story, and where sleep might want to keep one eye open. The archaeology team sent only you to watch the site overnight, calling it a discreet dig. Yet you know full well, this royal burial is on Korea's do not mess up list. And landing in tomorrow's headlines would be far worse than posing for a selfie with a 600-year-old cat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Then, drop a comment with your city in the current time. I want to see who's the latest night owl tuning in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The archaeology team sent only you to watch the site overnight, calling it a discreet dig. Yet you know full well, this royal burial is on Korea's do not mess up list. And landing in tomorrow's headlines would be far worse than posing for a selfie with a 600-year-old cat. You shrug off your backpack, raising a gentle fog of dust that glows in moonlight. The pines hiss like someone flipping a yellowed history book in another room. Step closer, and you can feel the stone tiger's gritty spine under your palm. Its sharp ears point due west toward the place the sun just slipped, exactly how late Goryeo geomancers liked their white tiger statues, shielding the tomb from the western gate of spirits. Mainstream historians claim these tigers were pure feng shui guardians, an ancient do not disturb sign carved in granite. Skeptics joke that if the statues were truly magical, the Japanese engineers who dynamited the tomb in 1905 would never have walked out of this forest. Night air turns suddenly cool, and you hunch your shoulders. Pebbles click beneath your boots like students hiding potato chips after evening study hall. But here, your only teachers are the moon and a pair of grumpy felines. Swinging your flashlight, you pick out the grid of excavation squares. Nylon lines pulled tight into silver, ready for workers to peel back topsoil at dawn. For you, though, tonight is a staring contest with 14-ton cats. The project calls it nocturnal monitoring. Your colleagues call it Ghost Story Certification. You scrape moss off a stone step with your heel, thinking that if these tigers could move, they probably wouldn't pounce. They'd roll their eyes and keep waiting for the next reckless tomb raider. A lone kerosene lamp near the tool shed sputters like an elderly ant sighing over dead houseplants. From your pack, you fish out a thermos. 10-minute steeped yuzu tea smells of caramelized rind. Many say archaeology's romance lies in unveiling the past. Others insist the thrill is writing reports before deadlines. Tonight, you're convinced the real charm is drinking hot tea on a lonely hill while your phone still has signal. Don't get too cozy. Legend says these tigers had their eyes opened. In sculpting lore, the final chisel stroke dots the pupil, a ritual animation that villagers whisper gives statues a login to the spirit network. Academics still debate whether this is Taoist ritual, mass-market superstition, or an allegory for craftsmanship pride. All you know is that once darkness folds tight, the hollows of those eyes seem inkier than any other shadow, as if guarding a secret nearly ready to spill. You flip open your field notebook. Page 1 reads, 2105, took shift, no anomalies. 2117, East Pine Shadow overlaps Tiger Shadow, possible animal movement. 2130, light breeze, pine noise, no new cracks observed. The fourth line stalls your pen should you log persistent sensation of being watched. Scientific notes aren't meant for hallucinations, yet if no witness exists, you might doubt your own breathing by sunrise. At the foot of the hill, a pair of headlights flickers, the driver fetching tomorrow's tools. The truck's taillights carve a red arc through the dark, like someone scripting cursive with a candle. You suddenly recall an old newspaper clipping. In 1963, a truck carrying restoration materials rolled downhill when its brakes failed, plunging into a ravine. The official report blamed mechanical failure. Gossip blamed the white tiger's wrathful paw hooking the bumper. Scholars still can't agree whether it was physics or folklore. Your job tonight is to ensure no hook paw sequel makes the morning news. Your wristwatch clicks past 22 o'clock. Flashlight beams across the tiger's stone muzzle. Dust motes glitter like shaved silver. The statue stays silent, yet its gaze feels sharper, more deliberate. You wink at it and mutter, same shift, different century. A gust rattles pine needles in what might be polite reply. Pulling your jacket tighter, you breathe slow, settling your pulse to that sleepy story channel, rhythm ready for the long watch of the first night. The first hour slips away like warm tea down the throat, unnoticed until your thermos weighs lighter in your hands. You pace the cordon lines, crunching pine needles, while the moon hoists itself beyond the ridge. Somewhere below, the river makes the kind of hush parents use when rocking a baby, steady and repetitive, coaxing you toward drowsiness. Yet every time your eyelids lower, a faint whisper skims along the treetops too soft to parse, too insistent to ignore. It feels as though the pines themselves are gossiping about you, trading notes on the newcomer who dares stand guard between two ancient cats and a king's eternal nap. You pull out a portable speaker and set it to gentle rain, thinking white noise might drown imaginary murmurs. Instead, the whispers weave around the drizzle track, threading the raindrops like silver fish. You click the speaker off. Silence returns, thicker now. Your flashlight sweeps across the excavation pit, where sleeping shovels and trowels glint like curled-up hedgehogs. A tarp flaps once, twice, then settles. That's when you notice the breeze has shifted. It now blows from the west, uphill, against gravity's usual preference. Geomancers of the Joseon-era would call this the reversal breath, a sign that the mountain's key is awake and stretching after sunset. Joseon Pungsu Jiri Korean geomancy loved nothing more than a dramatic skyline. According to the classic manuals, a royal tomb required 4 cosmic beasts: blue dragon to the east, white tiger to the west, vermilion bird south, black tortoise north. The textbooks mention rivers, ridges, parent mountains, and something called auspicious embraces, which sounds like a spa package but really means curved foothills guarding a grave's flanks. Scholars agree this cosmology traveled from China, but debate rages over how enthusiastically Koreans customized it. Some insist Joseon geomancers became bolder than their Chinese counterparts, flipping orientations to suit local winds and clan politics. Others argue the manuals were copied verbatim, no improvisation allowed. It's a polite tug-of-war among professors that occasionally surfaces in footnotes like passive-aggressive postcards. You recall that King Gongmin's tomb faces the setting sun by design, supposedly to honor his melancholy final years spent mourning his murdered queen. In Pengsu terms, a Western gaze invites restful closure, letting worries drift over the horizon with dusk. A guidebook once quipped it was history's most luxurious sunset seat. You imagine Gongmin lounging eternally with a view, though the reality is one dark chamber sealed beneath tons of earth, no sunset included. Maybe that's why the whispers persist. The king ordered an open view and got a bunker instead. To distract yourself, you unroll a small ground sheet beside the tiger on the north. Up close, its paws remind you of weathered loaves, each toe a knuckled crust. Someone in the 1980s used dental plaster to capture claw impressions for a museum exhibit. Rumor says the mold shattered in storage, fragmenting like brittle fortune cookies. No one bothered making a second cast, fearing the so-called curse. Officially, the breakage was unexpected material fatigue, though insiders still swap stories of night guards hearing ceramic crack on its own. Historians politely mark this anecdote unverified. You sit cross-legged, back against the tiger's pedestal. The granite is surprisingly warm, probably storing afternoon heat, yet you fancy it as the beast's slow heartbeat. Staring into the tree line, you practice slow breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4 sleep. Hygiene techniques your smartwatch keeps nagging about. Mid-exhale, a voiceno louder than your own pulse whistles by your ear. You jerk upright, banging your head on the tiger's knee. Pain sparks like static. You hiss an unprintable syllable and shine the torch. No one. But the whisper melodic syllabic lingers for a second, as if caught in spider silk between two branches. You decide there must be an acoustic quirk here. Valleys can bounce sound farther than logic allows. Soldiers during the Imjin War reported Japanese war drums echoing from unimaginable distances. Some modern researchers suggest temperature inversions at night bend sound waves, but others claim that explanation is, at best, incomplete and at worst, irrelevant. That phrase pops up often in conference proceedings, a polite academic way of saying, I respect your thesis, but also no. Yet curiosity claws at you. You open your notebook again and add 2243, audible whisper, origin unknown. Investigate temperature inversion hypothesis. Because that line looks lonely, you append a smiley face professionalism with personality. You flip the page and sketch a cartoon of a tiger wearing headphones captioned, Night DJ. Satisfied, you close the notebook and stand, stretching until vertebrae pop softly like distant popcorn. The west wind still blows, steady as a metronome. Your footsteps navigate toward a cluster of tall pines that lean like old librarians trading secrets. You cup your hands and perform a brief clapping pattern, an old field trick to gauge echo directions. The resulting slap thuds against trunks, ricochets twice, then fizzles. Whatever voice you heard doesn't repeat. Instead, you catch a new scent, something floral, maybe phantom dirt or blossoms far downhill. Or perhaps the centuries-old paper mulberry trees once used for royal decrees are blooming early. Botanists are undecided whether mulberry aromas can travel this far uphill. Experiments remain inconclusive. For a moment, the scene feels suspended. Moon halo, pine silhouettes, the tomb mound swelling like a whale back beneath stars. If history is a sleeping animal, you've tiptoed onto its ribcage. You imagine King Gongmin himself stirring, cracking a royal eyelid to survey the living who dare rattle his gate. Your rational brain lists probabilities. 0% ghost, 25% wildlife, 75% breeze, plus imagination. Yet your spine registers a chilly exclamation mark. You retreat to camp, flagging the sensation under pending data. Back at your pack, you check your phone. One new comment, someone from Buenos Aires. 10:43 a.m. their time. Sipping mate and procrastinating work. You smile, marveling that while you stand beside stone guardians, someone halfway around the world battles spreadsheets. The Global Insomnia Club meets again. You settle into a folding chair, hood up, trying to parse the whisper's cadence. It reminds you of Seijo poetry, 3 lines, 14 to 16 syllables, each shown of Korea's oldest verse forms. Poets of the Joseon court wrote about loyalty, longing, and occasionally rice cakes. One famous Siho laments missing home cooking so much he dreams of steaming dumplings. Maybe the tomb's resident voice is reciting forgotten lines, hoping someone appreciates archaic meter. Linguists remain divided on whether ancient Korean pitch accent survives in modern speech. You file that tidbit as cool but irrelevant to survival. Time drips past midnight. The whispers weaken, replaced by the steady cheer of crickets. Yet the west wind persists, like an invisible tide brushing uphill sand. You note the uncanny phenomenon, planning to consult tomorrow's meteorological data. Some colleagues will dismiss it as random. Others may spin new theories about microclimates around royal tombs. Academia thrives on discrepancies of polite blood sport you admire from afar. Finally, your eyelids sag, and you permit a microdose. In that half-dream, you walk through the burial chamber lit by thousands of paper lanterns, each lantern a whispering mouth. They chant fragmented sentences, half Chinese characters, half Hangul stitching centuries into a lullaby. You lean in to catch one phrase. Instead, a lantern bursts into a flutter of moths, and you jolt awake, heart hammering. The west wind has stilled. Somewhere, an owl hoots. Perfect timing, you think, to punctuate your paranoia. Scribbling the dream into your notebook, you write 017 Vivid Lantern Dream. Potential neurological response to fatigue and suggestion. You underline it twice, just so the morning team knows you noticed the line between vigilance and hallucination. Then you glance at the stone tigers, still seated, still silent, but in the moon shadow their carved pupils seem deeper like inkwells, ready to write the next chapter. You smile, a tight smile, whispering, "Good night, your majesties." And the breeze, finally gentle, from the east this time carries your greeting into the velvet dark. Dawn slides over the ridge like melted butter, slow and glimmering. You feel it first as a pale blush on the back of your eyelids, then hear it in the robins rehearsing scales somewhere above the tarp. When you crack one eye open, the sky is a diluted watercolor peach, swirling into milk. Your folding chair has tilted precariously, so you spill forward in a graceless yawn that would make a tiger statue smirk if granite could gloat. Stretching, you discover the night has left dew on your jacket, beadwork worthy of a minimalist jeweler. The sight stirs next. A sprinkled choir of footsteps, hushed greetings, thermos lids popping. Morning crew has arrived, their fluorescent vests glowing like highlighters, decorating the grave mound. You nod hello, doing your best veteran of the night watch expression. Someone hands you a paper cup of barley tea, nutty, comforting, caffeine-free, which feels cruel but traditional. While you sip, the chief conservator, Miss Kwan, announces today's goal: expose the northern retaining wall and document any mortuary objects nudged loose by tree roots. Her voice is soft but carries authority, the kind that persuades even drowsy dirt to cooperate. You reholster your notebook and join a trio assigned to clear leaf litter. The trowel bites through soil still cool from moonlight. Within minutes, your wrist vibrates a smartwatch congratulating you on daily activity. "Easy, buddy," you mutter. "We've barely begun foreplay with the ground." A nearby grad student snorts. Humor before breakfast. A promising omen. 15 centimeters down, steel scrape ceramic. You stop, signal, and together lift a palm-sized object, a glazed lantern stand shaped like a lotus bud. It's intact, except for one chipped petal. You cradle it, feeling the array of tiny perforations meant to release fragrance when an oil wick burned inside. During Joseon funerals, such sensors guided spirits with scented smoke-like cosmic GPS directions marked arrivals. Textbooks presented as standard burial equipment. Yet historians still debate whether the lotus design originated locally or was imported via Ming-era tribute exchanges. One camp argues the clay composition matches southern Korean kilns, Another insists the glaze formula screams Fujian province. The stalemate has spanned 4 conferences and 2 politely tense dinner buffets. You set the lantern stand on a foam pad, tagging its coordinates. Next emerges a small bronze mirror, face dulled but rim etched with swirling clouds. The clouds coil into a spiral, reminiscent of the roof tiles that roofers uncovered at several royal tombs decades ago. Those tiles remain infamous in heritage circles. Spiral ridges that catch light in a way modern architects would call playful. Scholars split. Were these ridges clever drainage channels ensuring monsoon runoff, or symbolic spirals guiding righteous chi downward? The drainage team often ends presentations by pouring water over 3D printed prototypes. The symbolism team counters with animated arrows of chi. Each side smiles through clenched teeth, proving that academic rivalry can masquerade as civility. You pocket a pebble for scale, then glance across the pit. A young technician photographs the white tiger statue's base, where rootlets have crept like gossip. You remember your nocturnal whispers and suppress a shiver. Instead, you volunteer to brush debris from the tiger's pedestal, anything to reconnect with last night's silent companion. Kneeling, you work the soft brush in rhythmic strokes. Soon, faint characters emerge along the plinth, stylized Hangul syllables interlaced with lotus scrolls. They form a playful riddle. Stone may slumber, yet who dreams deeper? The king beneath, or the cat who keeps him? You grin. It reads like something a bored stonemason slipped in, expecting royal auditors to miss the joke. Miss Kwan crouches beside you, amused. Court entertainment, she says. There's a memoir claiming sculptors carved riddles to win free drinks from inspectors who couldn't solve them. She chuckles, then adds, the authenticity of that memoir is contested. You add the phrase, still contested, to your mental bingo card. While the photography drone hums overhead, you step back to inspect the broader excavation. The tomb mound's profile is remarkably crisp despite centuries of weather. According to mainstream historiography, King Gongmin's burial style blends late Goryeo traditions with early Joseon restraint. No extravagant stone railings, but enough decorative flourishes to assert prestige. A perpetual tug between modesty and magnificence, rather, like your own dilemma when choosing thumbnail fonts. The grad student calls you over to witness another find, 2 interlocking wooden sticks sealed in lacquer. Initial appearances suggest phala, a percussion clicker used in Buddhist rituals to mark chanting rhythm. Yet a fringe theory proposes these sticks doubled as spirit keys, tapped against sarcophagi to unlock symbolic barriers. Evidence? 1 ambiguous line in a temple ledger and a heap of wishful thinking. The academic mainstream eyes it skeptically, though papers championing the idea continue to slip through peer review, perhaps because reviewers secretly adore a good ghost key. Mid-morning sun climbs higher, warming stone, loosening shoulders. While others measure soil strata, you sit on a crate, scribbling a field log. You jot down, lantern stand with contested glaze origin, spiral motif echoing roof tile debate, humorous plinth riddle, authenticity TBD. Then, because you're incapable of leaving blank space alone, you doodle the tiger wearing sunglasses, captioned, Graveyard Shift Supervisor. The page looks content. Lunch break brings dosarak boxes, rice, soy, braised beef, pickled radish. The crew gathers under a canopy, gossiping about grant renewals and the best convenience, store coffee. You flash your channel on your phone. Someone recognizes last week's episode about Goguryeo war kites. They tease you. Did kites whisper too? You shrug. Only when the tail ribbons crackle. Laughter drifts through pines, mingling with cicada chirps. Even under a weight of centuries, work sites can host banter like any construction zone. After lunch, tasks rotate. You're assigned to catalog roof tiles stacked near the tomb's retaining wall. Each tile bears that mesmerizing spiral-tight coil at one end, fanning outward like cinnamon bun layers. You weigh and photograph each piece, thinking about the drainage versus symbolism feud. One mentor used to say, never underestimate how often the answer is both. Maybe the tiles channeled water and channeled chi. Maybe ancient architects disliked forced choices as much as you do when the menu asks rice or noodles. You label the crate functionally ambiguous spiral tiles, anticipating the eye rolls it will earn in the lab. Mid-afternoon heat settles. Shadows contract. Stone tigers glare with sunlit ferocity. You swap your cap for a brimmed hat soaked in cold water field trick to dodge heat stroke. Surveyors call for photogrammetry markers. You help place them. Small checkered squares that make the mound look like it's auditioning for a VR video game. A drone buzzes again, mapping contours. Somewhere beneath your boots, a 14th century king reclines undisturbed, probably wondering why the living need so many gadgets. By 4 o'clock, the team decides to break, conserving energy for tomorrow's deeper trench. You help secure tarps, then volunteer for evening supply pickup. Miss Kwon warns, remember the 1,963 story breaks first, ignition second. You salute her with comedic solemnity. The equipment truck waits downhill. The driver hands you the checklist and a chocolate bar. Anti-curse vitamin, he says. You climb into the cab, thinking about the whispering breeze, the riddle under the tiger's paw, the endless debates about tiles and glazes. History's mysteries rarely resolve cleanly, but they do offer excellent storytelling, fueled apparently, chocolate. The engine rumbles to life. You release the handbrake, foot hovering over the pedal, hyper-aware of 1963's cautionary tale. The truck eases onto the winding road. Pine shadows stripe the windshield, while stone tigers recede in the mirror, their silhouettes merging with dusk's first lavender shades. You inhale, exhale, feel the wheels steady beneath your grip. For a moment, everything is quiet, no whispers, no debates, just the hum of an engine and the promise of returning before nightfall to continue a dialogue 600 years in the making. You follow the switchback road like a ribbon unspooling under violet dusk, pine trunks marching beside you in neat, whispered applause. The supply truck rumbles contentedly in second gear, box of spare trowels, water jugs, and that anti-curse vitamin chocolate vibrating behind the cab. As you descend, the tomb's hilltop slips from view, stone tigers now just a memory pressed against the rearview mirror. For a moment, you taste relief. No whispers, no riddles, only the ordinary promise of hardware store fluorescent lights and maybe a convenience store iced coffee. The first omen is small. The dashboard clock blinks, resets to 0 o'clock, then stabilizes at 6:31 p.m., a meaningless hiccup, yet unsettling. You reseat your foot on the brake pedal and tap. It answers with the usual honest bite. All good. The radio, however, fizzles into soft static before recovering a late-night trot music station. The host jokes about traffic on Route 1, slower than a turtle with acupuncture needles, and you snort. A little levity never hurt. Half a kilometer farther, the gradient steepens. You feather the brakes again. This time the pedal feels springy, lighter, as though the hydraulic fluid has taken the evening off. You pump twice textbook procedure and feel a faint grab, then nothing. The truck coasts. Engine still idling, gears engaged, but momentum ignores both. You mutter, "Not today, Gongmin," and press harder. The pedal sinks to the floor like a guilt trip. No friction, no deceleration, just the faint whistle of wind sneaking under door seals. Instinct takes the wheel. You downshift to first, listening for the grinding protest of over-revs. Instead, the gear stick flops into neutral. Your hand is sure you pulled left and up, but the lever insists on middle. The transmission has apparently joined the hydraulic holiday. As the slope tilts steeper, the speedometer needle creeps from 30 to 40 kilometers per h, the engine now eerily quiet freewheeling, as though divine fingers pressed the clutch. The road ahead snakes through pines, an asphalt luge run. An image barrels into memory. Black and white newspaper photo. September 1963. A restoration lorry upside down by a stream. Tarpaulin peeled back to reveal shattered crates of ceremonial tiles. Caption: breaking failure or tiger's paw. Historians still debate that headline. Some say lousy brake fluid. Others point to a peculiar gouge on the tailgate shaped suspiciously like claws. The records remain ambiguous because the surviving driver refused to testify, allegedly haunted by feline shadows in his hospital ward. Scholars argue over the absence of a proper metallurgical report. Skeptics label it folk embellishment. You'd quoted this story in last autumn's livestream, chuckling at its melodrama. Now the road tilts sharper and your laughter has nowhere to sit. 45 kilometers an hour. Pines blur into vertical brushstrokes. You scan for an escape ramp known. Korean mountain roads favor poetry over practicality, winding like dragon spines to thrill weekend hikers. Emergency shoulders are occasional afterthoughts. You spot a gravel turnout 50 meters ahead and angle the wheel. Of course, the steering column chooses this moment to stiffen. The wheel pivots only a grudging hair. The truck remains welded to the asphalt chute. Think. Options. You could kill the ignition, risking a steering lock. You could yank the parking brake, but that lever is notoriously theatrical, either drama queen or silent film. You test it gently. It wobbles without engagement, as if the cable snapped in its sleep. 60 kilometers an hour now. The pine silhouettes smear into dark syrup. You open the window, damp air slaps your cheeks, sharpening focus. Ahead, a hairpin bend glints like a question mark, carved by some cosmic copy editor. You recall a trick from a defensive driving seminar. Scrub speed by sideswiping the guardrail, using friction like a giant cheese grater. There's a guardrail on the right, silver and sturdy. You edge the truck toward it, metal screeching as front fender meets rail. Sparks spit, speedometer dips to 55, then stubbornly climbs back. Rail ends abruptly at a drainage culvert. So much for that. Another memory surfaces an obscure Joseon record called the Cartwheel Chronicle, detailing ox cart accidents while transporting royal jade. The text recommends packing sandbags to dump under wheels on steep slopes. Historians still puzzle over its authorship. Some suspect a disgruntled stable master with a flair for logistical drama. You lack sandbags, but the anecdote sparks an idea: the cargo box. It's full of loose equipment that could shift weight if you fishtail. Risky, but stalling feels riskier. You jerk the wheel left, then right. The truck yawns, cargo clunking like giant marbles. Centripetal chaos shaves a whisper of speed. 60 back to 54. You zig again. More clunks. A toolbox slams against a wall. 48. The hairpin zooms nearer, asphalt glittering with quartz. You realize you're muttering a chant-off prayer, half-lecture detailing braking coefficients, as if the truck might learn through osmosis. At the last second, physics finds mercy. The road surface transitions from polished asphalt to a patch repaired weeks ago with rough aggregate. Tires hit the texture like Velcro meeting loops. Vibrations roar through the cab. Speed falls 35. You haul the wheel into the bend, tires squealing. The truck drifts but stays on track, hugging the curve. Exiting the hairpin, gradient eases. You coast onto a flat stretch flanked by rice paddies glowing pale green under twilight. Momentum ebbs to 20, then 10. Finally, with a choked sigh, the truck rolls to a stop beside a roadside shrine, a tiny pagoda housing a weather-worn guardian tablet. You could kiss that tablet, but opt for breathing instead. Engine still idling, you yank the key. Silence crushes you like velvet. For a heartbeat, nothing exists except your pulse, drumming in your ears like a court announcer. You lean back, inhale the scent of overheated brake pads and pine resin. Hands tremble, small aftershocks of adrenaline. You whisper, "Okay, that happened," as if narrating for the camera you forgot to mount. You step out, knees wobble. Evening insects trill, oblivious. The shrine's guardian resembles a miniature dokebi, goblin grin frozen mid-mischief. You bow politely, no harm, reinforcing goodwill. Phone signal flickers 1 bar. You manage a call to Miss Kwan. She answers on first ring. Your sentences stumble, but key facts spill out. Brakes, neutral gear, coasted, safe now. She exhales, tells you to wait. She'll send the mechanic crew. Before hanging up, she adds, "And document everything. You know the board will ask whether this was mechanical or other. Other." The word hovers like a moth. You stand on the roadside and see, in imagination, the stone tigers miles uphill lifting granite brows, murmuring, "Got your attention, didn't we?" You shake your head. Correlation is not causation, but the timing feels choreographed. Scholars will analyze brake fluid samples, inspect lines for leaks, blame pressure drop or faulty cylinders. Yet folklore will note how dusk mirrored 1963, same slope, same silence, same guardian tablet apparently witnessing both events. The debate will reopen, panelists sharpening polite rebuttals. You fetch the field notebook, hand still shaky, and write. 1843 to 1851, uncontrolled descent, approximated 2 kilometers, total brake failure, transmission disengagement, road surface change and weight shift, reduced speed. Parallels 1963 incident, causation undetermined, mechanical versus folkloric. Beneath the line you sketch a tiger, perched on a steering wheel, wearing aviator goggles. Caption: White Tiger Driver Education. Humor is your lifeline. The sun slips fully behind ridges, leaving a bruise of cinnabar along the horizon. Fireflies spark over the paddies, tiny lanterns ignoring daylight savings. You sit on the truck step, nibbling the chocolate Barrett's sweetness grounding. While you chew, you recall a technical paper arguing that certain pinyon pine resins, when heated, release compounds that soften brake pad adhesives. Another camp dismisses the study as laboratory fantasy. You add a footnote in your notebook. Check resin, brake interaction if only to annoy tireless skeptics. Engine still off. You savor the hush. The night wind meanders down from Seongneung Hill, gentler now, as if apologizing for earlier theatrics. It carries the faintest scent of lotus incense, perhaps residual from that lantern stand, sleeping in a foam pad back at camp. Or maybe it's simple air-conditioned airflow from the distant convenience store manifesting as poetry. Either way, you accept the fragrance, inhaling gratitude and exhaling leftover panic. Headlights appear up the road. Miss Kwan's crew, vehicle humming with pragmatic order. You stand, wave, ready to recount every detail, certain that tomorrow scholars will file the event under still contested, neatly bracketed between physics and myth. And you, Night Watch storyteller, will have one more whisper to share with insomniacs across hemispheres. Night has pulled its velvet curtain back across Seongneung Hill by the time you return, this time in a replacement van with a braking system that purrs like a satisfied cat. The mechanic crew insisted on escorting you the whole way, but you waved them off at the service road, thankful to reclaim a little solitude beneath the waxing moon. You approach the site carrying a small case packed with magnifying lenses, raking lights, and because field superstition dies hard, 2 sticks of sage someone swore would keep mischief at bay. The excavation pit sleeps under tarps, except for the north-facing tiger whose paw still peeks out, half-cleaned, inviting unfinished conversation. You kneel beside the statue, snap on a headlamp, and set the raking light at a low angle. Granite grains sparkle like frost. You remember the playful riddle you uncovered earlier. Stone may slumber, yet who dreams deeper? And sense there is more text hiding in miniature gullies that daylight couldn't fully reveal. So, you unclip a soft sable brush and begin coaxing dust from the paw's creases. Each stroke releases centuries-old grit that smells faintly of iron and pine tar. After a few passes, additional characters emerge, nearly cursive hangul zigzagging between lotus scrolls. You adjust the headlamp beam and squint. The inscription continues the riddle in a calligrapher's looping flourish. A feather tickles the tiger. A whisper stirs the king. Which wakes first? You grin so wide your cheeks hurt. It reads like court humor defying stiff protocol. Gently mock the monarch. Face no consequences because the joke is encoded under a feline foot. You snap photos from multiple angles, mindful of epigraphy best practice. Side lighting, scale marker, alternating exposures. 16th century Hangul scholars would drool over this. The script dates to the mid-1400s, meaning the inscription might postdate the statue by a century, perhaps added during a Joseon-era restoration. Mainstream historians insist statue modifications were strictly prohibited after royal interment. Yet, here lies a smoking chisel. Inevitably, an academic debate will ignite over posthumous graffiti versus sanctioned embellishment, and you mentally reserve a digital front row seat. You jot a quick note. Hangul ligatures suggest 15th century orthography standardization Sejongian style. You underline Sejongian twice because the term carries weight. King Sejong's invention of Hangul in 1443 remains Korea's linguistic claim to fame, and any inscription from that formative era raises pulses in paleography department. Naturally, some scholars contend these transitional letter forms persisted well into the 1500s, muddying straightforward dating. You tuck that debate under still contested with a smiley face, because life is short and professional disagreements are eternal. Satisfied with photographs, you hover your palm above the paw close enough to sense cool emanation, not quite brave enough to touch again. This granite cat has opinions about braking systems. Best not test its patience. Instead, you unfold a thin mylar sheet, lay it over the letters, and begin rubbing charcoal to create a squeeze. As black dust collects, you think of odd trivia. Charcoal rubbings in East Asia once doubled as impromptu fortune talisman. Students tucked them into exam booklets for luck. The practice dwindled after multiple choice tests ruined the romance, but folklore lingers in stationery shops. Halfway through the squeeze, a voice cracks the silence. Burning the midnight granite again? You jump, smudge a letter, then recognize Miss Kwan's lantern bobbing up the path. She has traded her morning vest for a down jacket and mug of ginseng tea. You exhale relief. Human company. She squats opposite, eyes twinkling behind oval glasses. "Show me the secret comedy club," she says. You tilt the mylar. She reads, chuckles. "Court humor at its finest. I can already hear symposium panels arguing authenticity." She sips tea, steam swirling like miniature ghost stories. You know historians still debate whether workers left such jokes as acts of defiance or as covert petitions for better working conditions. She raises eyebrows. Maybe they wanted hazard pay for tiger surveillance. You laugh, remembering today's brake fiasco. Hazard pay sounds fair. You tell her the full descent story. Dashboard glitches, kaput pedals, gravel salvation. She listens, nodding soberly, then quotes a safety manual line. Equipment fails, protocols save. Still, she can't resist adding, "Stone tigers, 1. Automotive engineering, 0. Humor, field medicine for stress." While charcoal dries, the two of you contemplate the broader inscription. Miss Kwan confides that a newly surfaced royal ledger mentions minor refurbishments to Gongmin's tomb during the early Joseon reign, right when orthographic quirks in your squeeze suggest. The ledger entry, however, is contentious. Ink analysis points to 18th century pigment. Some scholars cry forgery, others argue late copy of earlier note. Academia's favorite seesaw continues. You pivot conversation toward the riddle structure. It mirrors a Seijo rhythm, 3-line, 44-syllable pattern, though compressed here due to space constraints. Kwan notes that palace artisans often composed Seijo while carving. They considered rhythmic tapping of chisels the percussion track. A curious microfield studies tool-paste poetry, analyzing hammer marks for musical meter, but critics call it archaeo-karaoke and demand stricter methodologies. You promise to link her a hilarious conference poster featuring chisels wearing headphones. Rubbing finished, you spritz fixative to lock the charcoal. Kwan suggests scanning it tomorrow for 3D modeling. Digital epigraphy meets heritage TikTok. The youth outreach team loves flashy renderings. Grant committees love youth outreach. Win. Win. She stands, sighs contentedly. "I'll leave you to your night guard shift. No unauthorized joyrides, please." She steps away, lantern glow dwindling, footsteps soon absorbed by pine duff. Left alone, you fold the squeeze into a protective tube and stow it. Moonlight brightens. Crickets resume their soft chorale. You sit cross-legged facing the tiger, deciding to answer its riddle aloud and whisper. If feather and whisper are the same breath, then tiger and king wake together. Granite offers no rebuttal, but a breeze flicks pine boughs, the kind of response you can interpret any way you choose. You lean back, feeling the day's fatigue unfurl like a forgotten banner. Yet your mind still sparks with questions. Who carved the lines? A playful artisan, a rebellious scholar, or a clandestine court poet sneaking protest under imperial radar? Maybe the feather tickling the tiger symbolizes restless laborers, the whisper stirring the king, unheeded petitions. Or maybe it is simply a cosmic joke, the universe winking through stone. No matter how heavy the tomb, laughter sneaks in. You click off the headlamp, trusting moon glow to keep you company. As your eyes adjust, you spot faint luminescence in the grass foxfire fungi, biochemical magic converting decay into cold light. Biologists debate whether such fungi thrived in Joseon forests or arrived later with imported timber. Either way, the glow paints the mound's edge a gentle green, like celestial runway lights guiding spirits. You watch, mesmerized, until eyelids drift half-mast. Before drowsiness wins, you jot final field notes. 2341, completed inscription squeeze. Orthography suggests mid-15th cent. Carver's intent humor? Protest? Scholars TBD. You add a miniature doodle, feather tickling a tiger, both giggling. Satisfied? You lie back on a folded blanket, arms crossed behind your head. The sky sparkles extravagant. No light pollution except your own heartbeat. The granite cat to your left stares forever west, unfazed. Somewhere beneath you the king sleeps the longest sleep, presumably unbothered by academic quibbles. You let your breath match cricket tempo, feeling the hillside cradle you like a stone-walled lullaby. And just before you dip into dreams, you murmur to the paw-inscribed riddle, where all dreamers hear stone, beast, and mortal night watch alike. Morning comes stealthily, like a polite guest removing shoes in the genkan of night. You register it first through smell, damp earth warming, pine sap beginning its slow daily ooze. When you sit up, mist drapes the tomb mound in gauze, softening every edge until the site looks sketched in graphite rather than carved in stone. Your blanket is peppered with foxfire spores that dimmed at dauntony green ghosts clocking out after their shift. You rise, roll stiff shoulders, and check the tiger's paw. Dew beads on the inscription squeeze, but the fixative holds. You slip the tube into a dry sack, patting it like a friend's shoulder. Beyond the pit, a crow lands atop the tripod where yesterday's drone rested. It caws 3 times the folk number for pay attention. You greet it with a salute and a whisper of barley tea steam. Work crews will appear soon, coffeed and clipboarded, ready to peel back new stratigraphy. You have 15 quiet minutes left, so you wander the mound's perimeter, boots treading carefully between survey flags. At the south berm, you pause to admire yesterday's find, spiral roof tiles laid out for cataloging. Early sun flares across their coils, turning each groove into molten gold. You remember the 2 warring theories, drainage versus divine spiraland smile, because in this light they look equally practical and mystical, like drinking straws for the gods. A length of ribbon grass flicks your shin, and you recall another obscure funeral custom. Mourners in late Goryeo sometimes planted bundles of ribbon grass along processional routes so that spirits could hold on if crosswinds threatened to disorient them. Ethnographers still debate whether this practice was symbolic or literal. A 1970s field survey recorded elders claiming they'd watched the grass bend without wind during a funeral. But skeptics chalk it up to mass suggestion. Either way, you gently tow a clump in greeting no harm, in offering the spirits a handhold. Your stroll brings you to the burial mound's western apron, where the ground suddenly dips, forming a natural bowl. Archaeologists believe it was designed to amplify ancestral rites like an ancient acoustics shell, though a minority contends it's simply erosion wearing a lazy grin. Standing inside the dip, you murmur the tiger riddle aloud and hear your voice curve back, fuller, as if the king himself hums along in subterranean baritone. Gooseflesh blooms. You whisper thanks and step out before resonance turns into residence. Returning toward camp, you spot fresh footprints overlaying your night path shoe treads, headed both directions between tiger and tarp. None of them yours. Animal? Unlikely. The prints show heel to toe, a human's cautious pacing. A thrill zings your spine. Did someone else patrol while you slept? You kneel to examine depth, shallow, evenly pressed, like a light person or someone weightless with intent. Facts: no missing equipment, no disturbed squares, no snack wrappers. Legends: night inspectors from the spirit realm, checking compliance. You shrug another note for the log. At base camp, you uncap a pen and scribble observations. Ribbon grass breeze theory versus myth, amphitheater erosion dispute, phantom footprint source unknown, still contested. You add a doodle, stick figure, wearing a security badge labeled Afterlife QA. A scooter buzzes up the service road first crew. Miss Kwan hops off, balancing a tray of sweet potato donuts. Breakfast diplomacy, she announces, and offers you one. It tastes like campfire marshmallows in pastry form. While you chew, she shares overnight lab emails. Preliminary brake fluid analysis shows microparticles of oxidized pine resin, corroborating the paper you meant to annoy skeptics with. Yet mechanical engineers reply that such contamination wouldn't cause total hydraulic failure. Findings inconclusive is their verdict. You almost choke on donut bits. Laughing mystery wins another round. The crew fans out, tugging tarps, calibrating levels. You join a photogrammetry duo, capturing the inscription site. Reflective targets dot the tiger's surface as silver freckles on ancient fur. As the camera sweeps, you ponder the inscription's riddle. Could it hint at ceremonial protocol nobody's yet deciphered? Feather fans waving before statues, whispered prayers beneath tomb thresholds. Court diaries mention tiger-soothing rituals performed during eclipses, but historians argue those notes refer to wooden tigers used in city gates, not granite guardians. Debate, like dawn, never ends. Mid-shoot, a junior intern asks why you look amused at odd hours. You answer, because history tells jokes and I'm lucky enough to hear them. She grins, scribbles it on her clipboard, maybe for a future Instagram caption. Your influence, modest but quirky, spreads. By mid-morning, the site hums like a well-oiled loom, each expert weaving data threads, LiDAR techs mapping microcontours, zoologists scanning pollen, linguists fussing over half-syllables in the riddle. You help label artifact trays, enjoying the quiet camaraderie. The earlier break incident already spirals through hushed retellings. Mechanic notes, superstition edits, driver heroics. By lunchtime, it will mutate into legend stage 1. As the sun climbs higher, you sense the tigers relaxing under daylight authority. Their eyes still glint, but the intensity softens, like bouncers easing at a family picnic. You catch your reflection in one polished whisker line, helmet hair, smile lines, donut sugar. You wink at yourself a small private approval. With notebooks full, batteries low, and your brain pleasantly sautéed in folklore and sunlight, you wrap up field duties for the shift. You stow the squeeze, double bagging it like precious pastry, and snap one last panoramic shot. In the frame, the excavation grid, the tiger pair, and the mist-lifted mound form a quiet orchestral arrangement, strings poised, brass muted, percussion holding breath. Before heading to the shade tent, you stand between the granite cats, shoes aligned at their invisible boundary. You bow once, deep and slow, to the king for hosting, to the artisans for humor, to the hill for resilience, on Yesto the tigers for their firm yet fair traffic calming services. A breeze answers, teasing your collar. Somewhere a crow caws again, twice this time, like a closing parenthesis. You wander back to camp, thinking about tonight's live stream script, brewing in your head. How to blend break failure physics, 15th century orthography, ribbon grass lore, and crowdsourced insomnia into a single lullaby. It'll require deft pacing and maybe a kazoo joke, but that's for later. For now, you pocket your pen, savor the donut aftertaste, and feel perfectly, marvelously awake inside history's long dream. A gentle hush settles over Seongneung Hill as afternoon light drips into amber. Tools clink softer, conversations float farther apart, and even the crows trade raucous shouts for polite throat clearing. You step to the edge of the clearing, letting shadows reach your ankles like warm bathwater. Pine fragrance sweetens, cicadas fall into metronomic lull, and stone tigers grow silhouette soft, more suggestion than sculpture. In this long exhale of the day, time loosens its belt. Minutes widen, breaths deepen, and every rustle sounds like a page turning in a velvet-bound diary. You close your eyes, picture the hill as a giant, granite-skinned cat curling for sleep-tail the twisting road, paws the twin statues, heartbeat the muffled rhythm of distant shovels. Beneath that fur, the king's chamber rests like a seed, dreams coiled in content. Overhead, clouds glide in slow choreography, their bellies pearled with sunset pink. They drift east, and for a moment the sky resembles a silk screen painting soft mountains, wandering cranes, one scribble of calligraphy you can't quite read. Perhaps it says, "Rest easy, stories wait for no sunrise." A mild breeze combs your hair, carrying a last faint note of lotus and wood smoke from the censer you imagined. The air cools, your shoulders drop, and each blink lingers a heartbeat longer than the last. Somewhere below, a rice paddy frog begins its nightly cello warm-up, long, low croaks that massage tension from your jaw. You inhale, tasting earth and moonlight. You exhale, releasing gears, deadlines, debates. The day's riddles fold themselves into neat envelopes, addressed, "Open when dreaming." And as twilight knits sapphire into the fabric of sky, you feel the border between waking and resting blur. Soft as charcoal dust on mylar, sure as granite beneath eternal pause.